Hello?
Well,
Live.
Are we live?
I don't know.
I have no idea. We need some.
We are live. We're live.
Thank you.
Okay, we're working. Apparently, we're working. Hello, everybody. Sorry for the delay and technical difficulties. It wouldn't be a Tuesday without them.
Hey,
Tuesday.
right? It is what it is, brother.
It is. It is.
Yeah, we apologize for that, folks. We had.
How's everybody keeping?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Although I got to tell you, I'm just about maxed out now with my hunkering down.
Oh, really?
I'm raring to go.
Get the Harley out for a ride.
Well, I was thinking about that the other day, actually, to be honest with you.
Boy, that'd be a nice, refreshing way of. Imagine yesterday or Sunday the weather we had, at least down here in Southern Ontario. Oh my God, that would have been beautiful. Hey, Doug, how you doing, buddy?
I'd rather be out on a boat, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's coming.
Anyways, so today is Q&A day, Fishing Canada Q&A. And if you just jot down your questions on the side, we promise to take them. We will endeavor. In fact, we will answer every single question you've got today.
Oh my God.
Every single one.
You know what you're doing there? Do you know what you're doing? You know,
I do.
The quicksand that you're stepping into?
So while we're waiting for them to load them up, let's get into a couple of questions that we didn't get to last week.
Yeah, man.
One from John Kuchera. What's the toughest fish you tried to catch and couldn't?
That's a great question, eh?
But why? And couldn't? Why? Wow.
So you attempted to, one that comes to my mind, Ange, and the audience will really appreciate this. You'll appreciate it only because it's exotic as heck. Ange and I were in PEI a couple of years ago for tuna, and we went out one of those days on the ocean. Couldn't get a fish to go anywhere, just doing the normal stuff. We got a phone call, and the guy said there's a flock of birds working the school of bait, of mackerel, and the tuna underneath it. So I don't know, Vance, if you can remember this, but those we literally steamed out with these. They're slowish boats. They're not the fastest boats to get out there to begin with. We can see this big flock of birds up in the air going crazy. All of a sudden, you get closer, you see the water erupting like that. As you get really close, there must have been 100, 200, 500 giant tunas smashing up these mackerel from the bottom. And then the birds are diving down. The gannets and the seagulls are diving down. And they're all feeding like crazy. We thought this is a shoe-in for getting a fish. So we put the boat in towards the school or wherever it's going to go. The fish would hear the boat or whatever, they'd take off. So we fished about an hour, Ange, at least, or an hour and a half, following that school for miles out in the ocean, and we could not get one of those tuna of all that feeding frenzy to go. That was one of the most frustrating things I remember in shooting times, you know what I mean, for a shoot like that.
And for us, that was pretty unusual because the two previous times that we'd been, I mean, the toughest part is finding them. Once you find them, getting them to bite with a piece of cake.
And they were eating.
I remember one time, Peter. Come on back on the screen here. I need you beside me here. I need to read your face on this one. Thank you.
Wow. Okay.
I remember. I want to say the Yukon, but it could have been Northwest Territories. We were pike fishing, and we were in the shallows, right on top of them, and you could see them down there. They were all over the place. Great big logs.
I know where you're talking about. The Yellowknife River.
Yellowknife River. That's it.
We launched in Yellowknife and went up. And
You remember how that was?
Oh my God. It was crazy. We could see them land. The only way I could catch fish that day, we finally got a couple. And the only way I got my fish was to throw in a jig and pig, a bass jig and pig. We had a couple of flipping jigs on the boat. And no, it was a flipping jig and a piece of sucker belly.
Piece of sucker belly, yeah. And that was it. That was the only thing that caught him and I think we got 3 fish total. Yeah. I don't know if you remember or not, but they were like crisscrossed on the bottom. It looked like logs that were just overlapping. There was fish everywhere. And it was that's what happens sometimes, right?
Yeah, for sure. So
that would be the toughest I could think of.
Yeah, I've got a lot of on our local cottage lake, my father-in-law's cottage lake. I got a couple of bays I always go. I got one bay I call Bull Rod Bay because I like it so much. It has some fun in it. But I had a largemouth bass sitting in that bay for a full season, every time we'd go up on a weekend or whatever, and I couldn't catch this fish. And I knew it was big. I didn't know how big it was. I knew it was big. And I couldn't catch that fish. When I get in there, I'd know it was hanging around. It would take off. It would take off. And then one of the neighbors on the lake called me up later on. He says, "Hey, you should see the fish I caught." And I said, "Where was it?" And told me where it was. And I thought it was a big one. He said, "Well," I said, "How big was it?" He said, "Well, one scale said 7.5 and the other said 8. That's how big this fish was that I couldn't catch, and he got it on a Senko. Oh my God! So I spent the whole year trying to catch that fish. Or, I didn't think it was that big, and I couldn't get her. So we get for sure.
Let's divest ourselves of some of these questions here. Favorite
one, the classic guy. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Yep.
Isaac Klein, favorite pike lures. Well, last week we talked about that, right?
Yep.
For Pete and I have got two totally different ideas or favorite pike lures. Mine, as of a couple of years ago, has become, and I don't have them here today. I had them here last week. I showed everybody. Great big, gigantic tubes. They look like conventional little bass tubes, but they are 6 and 8 inches and 10 inches long. Great big around, and they have a float inside of it. So when you throw them out, they actually, I won't say they float, but they stay up fairly high in the water column, and you can do all kinds of cool things with it for early season pike, for sure. My favorite, without question.
That's a crazy bait. Just remember, when you buy baits like that and use baits like that, you need the proper gear for that too, right? So when Ange and I are throwing that kind of stuff, we're throwing heavy swim bait rods to musky stuff and reels accordingly. 65-pound test on bait casters and stuff like that. I love those baits too. An all-rounder for me would be probably just a 6-inch jerk bait, a suspending jerk bait. I don't have to go real big on them. 6 inches is a good number. You can go early in the year or later in the year. And I think pike are notorious of all fish in freshwater that I have fished for. They're the most notorious for stalking and waiting and hitting at their opportune moment. So when that thing pauses in front of them, and they're just waiting for that moment. Finally, it pauses one time, and then poof, they're out and they smash that bait. That's why I like a suspending jerk bait. It's in front of their face, but you can kind of tweak it along like that. So if I had one bait to choose, it would be that, I think.
All right. Somebody says, good afternoon from Garrison. Dave.
Nice.
Garrison. Where's Garrison? Have we ever been there?
Garrison or Garson? Where is that?
Garson.
Looks like Sudbury, if it's the one I'm thinking of. Maybe he'll correct us. There's a little town right by Sudbury. I think I believe my cousin lives there. So maybe.
Classic wants to know, have you guys ever done a show on chain pickerel? Wow. I can't recall if you did, and if so, can you put a link up? Or chain pickerel. I can honestly say I do not recall ever purposely going out for chain pickerel. We've caught a few in our day, possibly.
Yeah.
But never purposely gone out. For those of you who are wondering what that is, it's a small pike. It looks like a tiny pike. Generally, I think the average size would be that 12, 14 inches. And they're actually part of the pike family, but they're called chain pickerel. Very small. And some lakes have tons of them. Some you don't see them in certain bodies of water. I'm really not that familiar with it, to be honest with you.
I think you see them more to the east too, don't you? Like we in Quebec, and we go to the east coast of New Brunswick. They get them a lot in there, so they seem like them more of a further east fish. Look just like a pike, unless you know what you're looking for. The markings, the only thing that are different is they look like a pike, but there's a bit of markings that are different. So we have not purposefully done that. I'd like to do a chain pickerel show if we could find some.
Exactly. Okay, what do we got next?
What brand? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Doug Neimer.
I was looking at higher. There's what brand polarized glasses do you use and/or recommend? There's one up there.
Where are you on that one? I missed that one.
HK Fishing.
So I'm going in order of what's on the screen there. Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Let's do the sunglass one then.
Okay. Well, the one that Ange put me onto this. He learned it down at the ICAST show, I think it was. It's a company called Onos, O-N-O-S. But we're using those for a specific reason. They have little cheaters on the bottom of them. So they have you can get them in various strengths, up to 2.5 or 3, I think it is, like that, plus 3 for magnification. And they're great for if you have normal vision but you need your reading glasses. We use these because they have great polarized lenses all around. But then when you need to look at your lures underneath, you're like this, you're tying your knots or whatever, you look down through your little cheaters, and they're great for that. So that's the brand we've used more than anything in the last bunch of years, or custom ones. Hey, Ange, you got some custom ones made up for your optometrist. I got a pair last year made up of them too. So
yeah, I got a really good pair of custom sunglasses made up a couple of years ago on. Very expensive, but man, it's worth it. Because, you know, the thing is, in our case, and most anglers that spend a lot of time in the water, you wear glasses a lot, like a lot. And so you might as well get something that's made for your prescription and for your eyes. So
yeah. And you know what? I was thinking about this. I'd like to do a piece. Ange and I maybe do an internet piece on, you know, fishing glasses, because there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Get it? So I think we could do a real good, interesting piece. So there's a good one. We'll mark that down, as we should get into that nice and thick one day. So
let's go to Doug Neimer. I said, Ron, he wants to know if we ever put together a blooper compilation video.
Oh, we did years ago. We did years ago, didn't we? But I don't know whatever happened with that. I don't even know if it's on DVD. So there is one out there. But I'm not sure where it even is. And we haven't done anything in the last, you know, I don't know, 10 years, have we? We haven't done anything like that.
It's been at least a decade. We're long overdue.
Yeah.
One might say, you know, you can't get bloopers when you're perfect, though, right?
Okay, well, you might want to bring the camera on my boat. There's a lot of crap that goes on. The one problem we don't do, Doug, is a lot of times is if it's not happening, if the fishing's dead, slow, whatever, we don't even roll cameras a lot of times, right? So a lot of times you don't get those bloopers. It's unfortunate. But now we've been doing a lot of the Garmin Verb cameras and stuff like that, and we're picking up more stuff that way. So I think we could probably go through our archives and get some stuff. But normally we're not even running for that stuff, which is unfortunate, because I'm sure we have moments of gold out there that we'd be almost embarrassed to show, but they'd be good.
Getting back to the sunglass thing for just a moment, Calvin wants to know what shade of sunglasses do you prefer? Because, you know, there's three distinct shades, right? There's the gray tones, the amber tones, and then the blue. Mm-hmm. And I always wear blue. I just prefer it. But, you know, if a person was really paying attention on shades and what each shade does for you, you should probably have a couple of pair, an amber and a gray, so that you can wear one during low light conditions and one during bright conditions, obviously.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what I have on those Onos. I have a pair of each. And the ambers go on an overcast day, low light or whatever, like exactly what Ange says. On those really bright sunny days, though, that gray really works well. So if you have a couple pairs, no matter what brand you're buying, a pair of ambers and a pair of grays will get you by on every situation. And
Calvin, you know, he's asking what's best for shallow water fishing, sight fishing, and either one of those shades, depending on the conditions, right? It's not one shade does all, one size fits all. Right. But having said that, I wear blue all the time, regardless of the weather. So
now, Calvin, just to let you know on this one too, and it may sound like common sense to everybody, but if you're sight fishing, you need good eyes to begin with. Okay, your glasses are just cutting glare. When Ange and I got our laser surgery, now we wear prescription lenses out on the water, it makes a world of difference no matter what polarization you have. You've got to be able to see everything in there. You've got to be able to see the little rocks and weeds. You've got to be able to see that fish. You've got to see the line markings of a fish. Say it's a large one, it's a small one, whatever. So really, it starts with really good vision, and then you go from there with your lenses. So, and it's crucial.
Cyril says the stripers are in the Shubenacadie. Hello.
That's not. Do you remember that though? We'll give you another instance. Ange and I were up there one year fishing the Shubenacadie, and is it Nova Scotia or New Brunswick? Which one is that?
New Brunswick.
Okay, and it's a weird little river that the tide blows in at about 100 miles an hour. Like, you would not believe this river. It's normally flowing one this way. Then when the tide comes in, the river literally flows the other way, and it comes in boiling. Like, it's so fast, and the clay banks, the banks are all clay. The water is complete mud when you get in there fishing, and you think there's no way you're going to catch fish. But, and you remember what happened there. Like, it was stupid.
what happens is they call it a tidal bore, right? So when the water's pushing in, as Pete said, in effect, it looks like the river's turning around. There's a little tidal bore at the head of it as it's pushing up the river. So you've got about a foot of wave, we'll call it, as it's pushing up the river. And behind this wave, as it's moving up, all you can see is bass, stripers, fins, fish, gorging and jumping, and they're following the bore all the way up the river. And then as soon as it starts turning up, everybody's out right behind it. And you got like this window of opportunity when it's going by you. Fantastic fishery. You gotta check it out.
That was crazy. It was like it was weird. It was like there's no way there's fish in here, and there was thousands of fish in there. So
do you remember what the bait du jour was? The only bait that caught fish?
No. What was it?
A bloodworm.
Oh, right.
Remember those little weird worms that sting that bite you?
Yeah, and it was, but only the natives could use them there or something.
Exactly.
Like that. We couldn't catch the fish, and they were all sitting there laughing their asses off at us. That's exactly it. Yeah.
For some reason, you couldn't use those worms. It was illegal for us to use them, but they were called bloodworms. I'd never seen them before.
And they're nasty.
They sting. If they get on your hand, they actually sting you. They bite you or some damn thing. But I'll tell you what, those bass loved them.
Oh my God, it was all they would eat. You're right. We had one earlier, Angie missed it. There was one. Do you guys use hair jigs for walleye? I saw it there. I can't remember what kind of.
As in bucktail?
Yeah, as in bucktails. Yeah.
I'm assuming. I still say it's the most effective walleye jig on the planet, and that is a good handmade bucktail jig in a color that's obviously popular in that particular lake. Yellow and black is always great. Black and white is good, but bucktail is incredible. I talked about it last week. It's funny, we all grew up with old school lures that caught tons of fish, and then at some point we clicked off of all those lures because we got into all the new wave stuff, and we forgot that we left a whole bunch of great baits behind us that were great, and a bucktail jig is one of those. I mean, that was a staple for years, and now you don't really see anybody using them at all.
Yeah. I mean, the only time you see a consistency in bucktails around southern Ontario, for sure, is guys that are in the Kawarthas ripping weed beds. They're rip jigging weed beds, and it is the best bait for that because number one, you can do whatever you want to that bait, and it doesn't come apart, doesn't wreck, doesn't rip, whatever. And number two, basically rip jigging. You're throwing a bucktail jig with braided line. Usually on spinning gear, and you drop your jig in, and then you pop it, and you reel up the slack, pop it, and reel it, and so it's ripping through the weeds. It's pulling weeds, it's ripping weeds, it's snagging up in weeds, but it's always kind of freeing itself, and it goes up and down, up and down, and up and down, and then it triggers a walleye to bite. And that's the most effective bait for rip jigging there is. Some guys use plastics and all that, but you got to kind of take it easy because now your plastics might rip off. They may pull back down the hook or whatever. I mean, you got some Z-Man stuff like that. The baits won't rip, but they'll still pull down the hook eventually. So that's what a bucktail jig is. With braided line and spinning gear for rip jigging, still the best by far walleye bait going.
Dennis wants to know: have we ever fished Madawaska Valley, and if so, where and how?
I did a show on the Madawaska River one time.
Yeah.
A bass show, but I don't know if that's the Madawaska Valley or not, to be honest with you. And we've shot the mouth of the Madawaska as well for catfish one time. We did that, but I don't remember. And that was in Armpire, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I don't know where the Madawaska Valley is. Maybe he can embellish upon that, but we did do something on that. We have fished the Madawaska for sure, so.
Hair jigs we done. Part of Sudbury next to the airport. Stad Valley.
That must have been the Garrison one or wherever it was. That part of Sudbury, I think, maybe. As Ange is looking there, there's another comment. Keep looking, Ange. There's another comment going back to the glasses. The cheaters. I did hear about this too. I forgot about that. In that Maui gym does have in different colors for about, he says you go to Bowmanville behind the credit union or something like that. There must be a glasses store there. $279, which sounds expensive, but Maui gyms are very good glasses too, and they're up to 2 times power. So they're making them too, with the little cheaters on them. So highly recommend it. What are you laughing at?
This is good. So Midwest Fisherman says, Angelo, Reno, and Pete came to Chicago for the 2000 Bassmaster Classic. I remember that, Pete. Remember that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Do you recall sitting in Soldier Field next to a chubby blonde-haired guy with a whole giant stack of bar
exam prep books for a lawyer, I guess.
Bar exam prep books. That's me. Wow.
There's his picture there. He's got a bass in his hands. I don't remember that. Do you?
You know what? 2000 was a long time ago. Had you asked me maybe last week, I might have remembered, but that was a long time. That was a great experience. I remember being at the Classic. That was the first time I'd ever been to a Classic. Yeah. And it blew me away. You know, for anybody who hasn't been to one of these events, it just blows your mind and makes you feel really good inside too, that our sport, our passion, our activity is that big in some jurisdictions, because they filled an entire baseball stadium of people. It was like going to a Stanley Cup playoff game. It was unbelievable. Just a great experience. So I remember that part, but I don't remember sitting next to the little short, chubby guy. But
Amick Lake. Have we ever fished Amick Lake Resort? I have not. I don't know if you ever Amick Lake at all.
I've heard of it.
It's not that far from here, I don't think. Yeah. And I've heard pretty good fishing, but I've never fished Amick Lake ever. So next one down there, see that? Oh,
Greg Brown?
Yeah, Greg Brown. Yeah.
All right. Greg Brown wants to know what is your best knot for braid to fluorocarbon and why?
Oh, is that? I didn't see that one.
Okay,
right, good.
Yeah, it's
up there. Got another one too. He's got another one there too.
For me personally, about I'm going to say 6, 7, 8 years ago, Gord Pizer got me onto this thing called a Bob Foreign knot. And I've been using it ever since. Now, at first, it looks very complicated. I can't describe it to you here. I'll tell you what we will do, though. In consequent episodes, I'll bring some rope, and I'll do it with a rope. But if you go on the internet and punch in Bob Foreign, Foran, knot, you'll see all kinds of illustrations for it. But it is an incredible knot. Once you get the hang of it, and get over the initial shock of how difficult it looks, it is an easy knot to tie. You can tie it in the dark. It is absolutely guaranteed. The only drawback with it is that you do have to use a lot of line when you're doing it. So when you're making your leader material, you got to leave yourself an extra couple of feet of what you intended to have at the end. But my God, it is bulletproof. It will not break, just will not break. So Bob Foreign, how about yours, Pete?
Normally I've gone by, I used to use, and now I'm back to when I use the Bob Foreign as well, the Foreign knot. I like it. It's a good knot, but I feel very confident in the double uni knot. So I've used the back-to-back uni knot for most of the times. I basically have 10 strands of each side, or 5 wraps. I mean, 5 wraps each side to give 10 strands. But I'm going to tell you what, Ange, you're gonna hate me for this, but I am going to learn. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to learn the FG knot, and I'm going to get proficient at it. And this is a knot that I guarantee you, Angelo Viola will never use in his life. Now, number one, he likes the Foreign knot, but he will not run an FG knot on his line. I'll guarantee you. And I'll tell you know why, Ange?
Why?
Because it's about 20 strands long. It is like long. No. It is like a huge knot. But I have popped so many braid to fluoro knots. The way I set the hook, the way I fish, there's something I'm doing wrong. I'm not using the shock absorber the way it is. Whatever it is. You haven't
broken the Foreign knot, Pete.
Oh, I've broken it many times, my friend. That's why I'm back to the uni. Yeah, that's why I go back to the uni now, because it's a bigger knot. So now, but this FG knot, and what I'm going to do on this is my plans. I'm going to learn that knot. I'm going to tie it, and I'm going to tie a longer leader. So I'm going to have it so that my leader will come up into the spinning reel or into the baitcaster before I even get to the fish of the boat. Because normally you got about 3 or 4 feet, and it's out past the rod tip. I'm going to reel that thing right through all the guides before I get that fish close, so that I have that's.
The problem with that, though, is that every cast you're going to feel it and hear it going through the guides, and it's going to impede your casting. If you're trying to do some trick stuff,
I'm going to accept it. I'm going to accept it and live on with life, so that I can hear that little wee bit that it goes through, because there's a thin knot. It's very thin. It's just long, and I'm going to say I got to try it. So that's what we use and what I'm going to use. Okay,
so boys got worms. Boise got worms. Campbell says, "Hi guys. What's your favorite drop shot bait? As I am in Elliott Lake, Ontario, and smallmouth are open here all year round, but I only catch and release those bad boys." Well, funny you should ask. Just about any bait is my favorite bait on a drop shot, so long as it's called a shad-shaped worm by Yamamoto. I think I've said it a million times. I have absolutely no idea what makes them work. If you look at it, it's not a worm, it's not a minnow, it's not any of the above, but it's called a shad-shaped worm. But if you look at it, you say, why does this work? What makes this thing tick? And we've asked ourselves a million times, and we stopped answering because we don't know. All I can tell you is there is not a better drop shot bait than a shad-shaped worm. And color, yeah, I've got a couple of flavors that I particularly enjoy, but honestly, I don't even think that matters a whole bunch.
You know what? This is one that Ange and I will totally agree on. I don't know of a better bait than a shad-shaped worm, a Yamamoto shad-shaped worm for drop shotting. Honestly, it's just a matter of colors you got to go through. If you have a good variety of all colors, I don't know what it is about it. Like Ange says, it's a weird-looking bait. It's not. It doesn't look alive, as in anything else is alive in there, in the water. But it works for us, and we both. It is our go-to on every shoot, every tournament, every trip when nothing else works. That is our go-to bait.
At least one of us. At least one of us.
Yep, for sure.
At least one of us has it in the water at all times.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt. Even when we're shallow, even if somebody is throwing topwater baits in the shallow, the other guys drop it or drag it one of these crazy-looking deals, and it's
And the other thing we do at times is we know that bait is so effective that Ange will run a 18-inch lead drop shot, and I'll run an 8-inch lead drop shot to see if there's a difference between the height off the bottom. So we'll do that with the same bait, and that can tell us a lot of times too. So now we know when push comes to shove, we're going to get them on a shad-shaped worm. Just now we got to figure out the lead. So we'll work together and see which is working better, and then you either lengthen your lead or trim it down on your drop shot too. So we've done that, and it's worked out real well for us too. So.
By the way, I have been corrected because you weren't sure, and I jumped in. The Shubenacadie is in Nova Scotia.
There you go. There you go. So hey, Chris Hockley's on. Chris Hockley Outdoors.
Hey, Chris, how you doing, buddy?
He's the best in the test period. There you go. You got an agreement with Chris Hockley there, buddy. He taught Gord that knot. Look at that, eh?
Oh, wow. Perfect.
Awesome. It is a good knot.
It's good if Chris is using. I'll tell you that right now.
He can't put much power in the hooks at Kenny. Oh, my God. He'd break the rod.
Chris, by the way, for those of you who don't know who he is, he's been in the fishing industry for, I won't say years, because that would make him older than me, and he has not been around longer than I have for sure. But he now is in the fishing industry, and he works for Rapella, Normark. But the way we met Chris, Pete and I met Chris, was, and I don't remember the year, I'm sure Chris will know, he was a contestant in a reality fishing series that Pete and I produced called The Last Call. And I'll never forget Chris. He was one of the most enthusiastic competitors. There were 50 competitors there from all over North America, and Chris was one of them. And I remember meeting his mom and his family and everybody else there. Just a great bunch of folks. And Chris came close, but he didn't quite. He was.
Yeah, I made the finals.
right, Pete? He was upset at me for a couple of years after that one, I think.
Oh, that's right.
The way he went out.
Oh, that's right too. Exactly. After all his fishing skills, and he had to go that way. Well, we won't get into that. I wonder if that's the Hitman. Brent M. I bet that's my buddy, the Hitman. Says, "Who cuts your hair, Mr. Bowman?" Well, during this pandemic, my butcher's been cutting it because that's what it looks like right now. Oh God. I saw another good.
Somebody else remembers you, Stephen Hussey.
But let's go back. We did a reiteration of knots. Platinum Fishing says FG knot is amazing. Easy to tie once you learn it and get proficient at tying it. I'll show you 3 different ways. I show 3 different ways on his YouTube channel. So Platinum Fishing there. I'll take a look at that afterwards too, because I'm looking for a good way of doing this. So for the FG knot. Well, they're coming in here good, aren't they?
I'm having a hard. You know what we should do? You know what we should do? Our producer should see if he can scratch out the ones that we're answering, so we don't go back through them again. I'm always confused. I'm going back up and down the list here.
There's a Sonar question.
All right, let's go with it.
There's Calvin's got one before that. What type of landing net do you prefer? Well, that's a pretty good question too. You know what I mean? What type? I mean, maybe rubber versus nylon versus whatever, I guess, right? So the rubber nets are nice. And we love the rubber nets for the, it's nice on a fish, but they do rot. I will say I've had bad luck with rubber nets unless you're really, even if you keep them in your garage, they still rot. I don't care what anybody says. After years, you're going to.
But there's 2 ways to look at that. Okay, for the $20 that it costs, first of all, you can buy a replacement net, the hoop, and you can buy it every year or every couple of years and not worry about it. I mean, think about it. Or you could go to the rubber coated nylon, which is another real popular netting. So it's not quite as good as rubber, but it's not just straight nylon. So it has the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And there's certain nets too. Like when you're going musky fishing, you have to have a big net, because I'll tell you what, if you get a 50-inch fish and you're trying to stuff it into a walleye size net, you're going to have fins that are going to cut and rip and break, and et cetera, et cetera. So you got to remember that if you're going to take on musky fishing, let's say, very seriously, you need to get a net like the Big Kahuna or something that's just gigantic that you can fit a full 50-inch fish in and have it swimming around. For trout, you get a small little rubber. There's a good little rubber net out there for trout now. It's a nice small size. Bass, anything between. It's a personal choice. You don't want your hooks tangling up a lot of times, right? So that's what Anne's was saying. The coated nylon nets are good for that too. So.
Somebody wants to know what's the best color braid for clear water. Yeah, Pete knows this. I'm really paranoid about braid. I love braid, but I'm really paranoid in crystal clear water, especially relatively shallow conditions. For sure. Pete talked earlier on about having a really long leader. I do that a lot of times. It's not unusual for me to have a 20 to even a 30-foot leader tied on, which does not make any sense. And we've discussed this a million times on the boat. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So for me to have, say, 30-pound braid on a reel or more, and tie a 6 or 8 pound tippet on the end of it because I'm paranoid about visibility, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why am I using all that heavy braid when really the tippet is my weakest link? But I do, and it works, and I enjoy fishing with it. And I think a lot of guys are in that same scenario. I mean, in a perfect world, it'd be great just to tie braid right onto your bait regardless, because then you've got the best corrosion resistance. You got the toughest pound for pound line you could use. It'd be wonderful, but it's not a perfect world. So
I don't know if there's color.
You do it quite a bit. You tie directly on quite a bit, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I actually, but it's never. And when his situation is clean water, I would never use straight braid in anything but stained water. You know what I mean? I love if you can use straight braid, why not? Right? That's the way I look at it. But in ultra clear water, it's a gray, a gray or a green or something like that, something dark. I mean, we're always ending up taking the magic marker and darkening our line anyway, so it goes really white. I think the lighter colors, like the fluorescence and the white braid, to me, that just stands out so much. I might be wrong. That's from above the water. But then again, we're always tying on that fluorocarbon leader. So 8 or let's say a 10 or 12 pound and spinning 10 or 12 pound braid, and you're tying a 6 or 8 pound leader on it. It's all thin, it's all about the same diameter, right? So you're defeating the clarity by putting that fluorocarbon leader on there. You're kind of upping your odds by doing it. That, like Ann says, if I can tie straight to braid, I will, but it's got to have some color in the water. Otherwise, I don't do it.
By the way, Midwest fisherman, remember the question about the Classic earlier on?
Yeah.
He says, Angelo, I grew up outside of Detroit and watched your show from the Windsor station across the border, Channel 9 in Windsor. And that you, he goes on to say that we were shocked that he actually recognized us, an American recognized us at the 2019 or 2000 Classic in Chicago. And he goes on to say, by the way, I did pass the bar exam that summer.
Nice.
Lawyer, so good thing to know.
Nice. Knockley says, yeah, I can say I lost 50 grand in a card game.
Yes, you did.
Chris,
you can't say that without any problem whatsoever. You lost 50 grand on a hand, on a card.
Oh, God.
Boy, I'll tell you, that was one of those things. You know, we all have memories of being someplace at that time and that moment, and it stays with you your whole life. That was one of them. That whole 14-day period that we shot The Last Call with me is such a vivid memory. A fantastic outing. It was physically and mentally challenging and demanding, but boy, what a great and think about it. You know, I'm talking to you now, Chris. Think about how many connections were made and how many relationships were made and how many careers were started from that event. It's mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling. It was fantastic. We have to put that, I don't know who we need to talk to, but we need to put The Last Call up on YouTube.
Absolutely.
I think it's great.
Yeah, it's a reality fishing show. When you think about it. I got one here. A question, I think is to me. I know I did it at one time anyways. Brad Bose or Boss or something like that. When you fished the Sault Ste. Marie Rapids on the St. Mary's River, did you anchor the boat at the rapids or keep it in forward gear? Well, I was with Tyler Dunn, who's a guide there's fished there forever, but we always, Ange and I fish the same way. If we're in current waters and there's the rapids, there's current water, we kept the boat in forward position with the big motor. The trolling motor wouldn't work on that. It's too strong. So basically you point nose first into the current so you can drag your bait backwards. You're still going backwards, but you keep your boat in gear. So anchoring would be tough. First off, your anchor would have to grab, and then you'd be casting and letting your bait drift and let your bait drift. But this way we could go up and then still cast on angles and cover a lot more water and grab different drifts all the way down the river. So you keep your boat in gear pointed forward. Now, when Ange and I are fishing on the St. Lawrence River, for instance, a lot less current, we'll use our trolling motor, but the same thing. We're going to point our nose into the current, and then we're going to kind of drag backwards. So the boat's basically going in reverse. So now you can dial yourself right into the perfect speed of the current. You can cast a little bit away from the boat if you want to, so you're not spooking the fish. But that's in 30 feet of water too. So nose into the current is a very good way of presenting a bait in a boat. So.
And the ultimate example of that was the show we did last year in New Brunswick. No, it was Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Bay of Fundy striper fishing, where we did exactly that in right at the peak of the tide, rushing in, nose into the tide, anchored, and fishing off the back on a piece of structure that we had already marked with sonar, and then went upriver, dropped the anchor, and let the boat come back to it.
Yeah.
So
that was mayhem.
That was crazy. That was insane. I love
that anchor wouldn't even hold at first. I thought we were going to break the rope. Oh, God. What do we got? Anything else there?
So
I saw one there. I got to try and find it about the fish finder. Did you see the one about the fish finder? Like
Benji Molina wants to know the reference of sonar versus fish finder.
Oh.
Am I mistaken? Well, sonar, I personally, when they started calling it fish finder, I questioned that. And I still do to this day. I do not call it a fish finder, because that, to me, if you call something a fish finder, somebody coming into the fishing world to get started and you hear that you have to have a fish finder, buys one of these units, and then they'll spend the rest of their fishing lives looking for fish with it. And that's not what they're for. The sonar is your eyes below the surface, if you will, so that you can better understand and see what it is that is attracting fish to a particular area. Call it a fish finder. I just think it is in my opinion, for novice anglers going out to buy electronics and sonar, they should not think of it as a fish finder, and they should not use it as a fish finder. Look for structure, look for things that fish will be attracted to, and you'll find fish. That's why I don't like calling it fish finder. But a lot of people, the whole industry calls it a fish finder.
Mm-hmm. Now, going on that question, there's another sonar question. It says, when you use your down imaging versus regular sonar, why? Or why do you, I guess, why the chair? I guess maybe I'm not reading right. What are the differences? Well, down imaging is basically you get a much better view. Let's look at the structure that Ange is talking about, and you can really study the bottom features with down imaging. Okay, that's so as a bottom is concerned, seeing weeds. The weeds look more like weeds. We call it clear view in Garmin's world. Versus on a traditional screen, the weeds you're looking at and saying, is that interference? What is that? Is that craziness? Is a fish moving up and down? There's some doubt when you're looking at it on a traditional screen. On the down shooting mode, you really see what's down there in the sense of structure and cover. And then in the world of fish, if you really study it, and the best way to do that is almost put up a side-by-side screen. So one side of your screen is traditional, and the other side of your screen is downward clear view. And then when you see fish, your hooks, you know, the little hook you see on a traditional screen, and when you do find the fish, they will look like hooks. Then you look over at the other side of the screen, you see the clear view screen, and you're going to go, wow, it doesn't even look like a hook. But you start to recognize they're little dots. There's these little dots. And it's almost more accurate when you get onto that clear view screen. So there's advantages and disadvantages to it. Really, the structure and cover is so defined on that screen. And if you look at it hard enough and study it and learn it, then you rarely go back to the traditional screen. We use traditional a lot of times for our high speed running. When we get down to basics, let's get down to the brass nuts here. Then we go on to the other screens and really dive into it. So,
in my opinion, today with today's technology, the only time that you should be looking at a unit as a fish finder is when you're looking at things like Panoptix, live scope, because they are a valuable tool to actually find fish and target fish because it's live. It's not like traditional sonar. So it's pretty easy to identify where that fish that you're looking at on the screen, where it is in your area. And so you can actually cast to them. You can fish for that fish. Anything other than that, sonar is just a means of seeing below the surface, finding structure, or even cover for that matter, that the fish are going to relate to, and then fishing it. But when it comes to fish finders, then that should be right after the word Panoptix or live scope, either one of those. We've got one here that I wanted to talk about now. See, every time I go away from the screen, somebody moves.
It scrolls down. It keeps going. I got one as you're keep looking there. I got one. What strength of fluorocarbon would you use for pike as an alternative to bite wire? So as an alternative to wire. So you really got to go heavy. Pike's teeth are nasty. They're like a musky tooth. They're like a serrated blade, right? They're like a knife blade, whereas a walleye's tooth is like an ice pick, let's say. It's got its own point, but it goes out around it. A pike and a muskie's tooth is a serrated shark tooth. So when you touch something on the edge of that, it cuts instantly. As you notice, sometimes you lift your line, light line, when you're walleye fishing, and it's like nothing's there. What happened there? And the pike is basically bit you off without you even feeling it. So you got to go heavy with fluorocarbon in that sense. So I've used myself. I've used 40. But that's a bare minimum. I mean, honestly, 60 and 80 is better. And all the musky guys, they're all using 120, 130 now for their fluorocarbon leaders. So it's big. The downside to it is, yeah, you're going to see it. It's probably more visible, but it is fluorocarbon. But so is wire. So is anything else you're using, right? So you suck it up. So I would say a good number to start at would be 50 or 60 on the low end, and then go up from there for a bigger pike. So Uh-oh. Hello.
I know I did turn it off.
I forgot to say, I got to get mine off too right now. Oh boy. There we go.
Outdoorsy gal. Here we go. Angelo Pete, I have to go picking fiddleheads. So pop in and say hi to everyone. Have a great day. Well, and pick some fiddleheads for me. And while you're at it, and find some mushrooms. Great bonus at the same time.
Feed going there. Good for her.
So the one I wanted to do, first of all, somebody wants to know why we don't bring back our original slogan from 1986 when we started airing the Fishing Canada show. Do you remember what it was, Pete?
The catch or limit one?
Catch your limit, but limit your catch.
Yeah, that's a great slogan, actually.
You remember how we got that? You don't remember all that stuff there. You don't remember.
I remember the slogan, but I'm not thinking this is a nice little get together. Well, no, I don't know the story behind it.
Peter Pokaluk.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. He says, hey, I got a great idea.
Isn't he the guy that catch and keep and eat too?
Yeah, he was on the show. Yeah, exactly. He was one of the hosts of the show, and he says, why don't we start using the slogan, catch your limit, but limit your catch? Because at that time we were pioneering catch and limit. It was in fact, I remember on both coasts of Canada in the first few years that we were we did right out of the chute, we were 100% catch and release. It was almost a religion for us. And I remember going to both coasts in that 1 year, and in both cases, people had heard about this catch and release that we were doing. And in both cases, it was almost a protest for us being there with this release business, because it was anti-fishing to be putting fish back. Like, what are you, crazy? Why would you teach people to do that? And that was some almost 35, 40 years ago. So I remember that slogan very well. We should bring it back. Why not? We brought the original theme song back. Why can't we bring the, right?
It's great. And we live by it. I mean, you know what I mean? You don't say don't keep any fish. You limit your catch.
Yeah.
Do that. Yeah. Done.
Okay.
Calvin? See Calvin there? Hey, Angelo. Have you ever the blue walleye. I don't know a whole lot about that subject. I know I went fishing for them when I used to go to Sudbury. We had one lake, Lovering Lake it was called, and that was the only lake in that whole area that they called blue pickerel at the time, blue walleye. But and we caught some, and they had a bluish hue to them. I mean, it was a distinctly different looking fish. I don't know what's it's pigmentation in the skin. I'm not sure what it is, but do you know anything about it, Ange?
My story on it is genetically it is a subspecies. However, everybody I've talked to in the field on location always tell me that it's because of diet, because of the food. Yeah. Wow. So, but I know for a fact that it is a subspecies, and it generally there's pockets of them throughout Ontario and Quebec. I'm not sure about West, but certainly in these two provinces there are. They're generally smaller fish for whatever reason, kind of like a sauger kind of sauger another species, right?
Wayne Morrow says blue walleye. I've heard of blue bass caused by the proteins in the diet. I've never heard of bass, but it could be the diet, right?
And pike, same with pike.
Yeah.
You'll get pike that are almost a chartreusey translucent color. And once again, that's all about diet. So a lot of the fish's coloration is based on its surroundings and its food.
There. Stephen put a picture up.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow. Look at that, eh? Look at the difference too. It's pretty cool. Just to let you know, Ben Molina said we came close to answering the question regarding sonar down imaging. Something else might have been. So Ben, if you have something else in there and you haven't written it in yet, if there's anything else we can add to it, then go ahead. But we'll try our best, buddy. That's all we can do.
Chris is still out his 50 grand that we owe him.
You both owe me 50,000 worth of lunches. So and for him, down a week. Oh my God, he's a beast. Oh God, what's this?
Melina, you can find that. Same control on Niagara River. Fishing Mutt says Niagara River, what a great body of water that is, eh? And it's just
That's unreal.
underutilized as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure the people who fish it regularly won't agree with us, but every time we've gone, you're hard pressed to find anybody using it. This big, strong current, huge body of water, wide, deep, all kinds of stuff happening, tons of species, and nobody fishing it. And it's insane. What a great body of water that is. I've got some wonderful stories about that. What else we got here?
Niagara, by the way, is a great multi-species river too. It's one of those phenomenons where you can go and catch almost every species of fish around, like in fresh water, in the Niagara River. So that's it's a congregation of species in one body of water, which is rare. You know what I mean? It's hard to find on a lake. So.
Steve Nichols wants to know, do we use side imaging? Absolutely. And he's planning on learning to use it. It's a great tool. Once again, it's just another tool. Sonar now has been divided into so many subcategories, and side imaging is just another one. When I first saw the value of side imaging was on the Fraser River in BC. We were sturgeon fishing, and Vic Caro, our good buddy out that guides for them, he had a side imaging sonar in his boat. And we were actually, now that particular day, that side imaging unit was a fish finder because he was looking for individual sturgeon sitting in the Fraser River. And the side imaging, as he went up the middle of the river, we could see those sturgeon and where they were sitting. And we would go up past them, drop an anchor, like we talked about earlier on, and then just come back to them and then feed the line down to where they were sitting. And it was magic. That's when I first saw the value of this side imaging. Of course, today we use it in all types of application. One of the really great ways to use side imaging is on mid-lake humps, underwater islands, we call them. It's a great way to completely map that island without spooking any of the areas on it, just by going around. And then if you use the quick draw imagery that we have on the Garmin units, you get this wonderful drawing of this island. You see all the little nuances, all the little crevices and the overhangs and the cliffs and the boulders and the wood all around this island. And the only way you can do that is with really good side imaging. So we use it a lot now.
And I'll highly recommend, because he said he wanted to learn it, then you need to learn it. You put the rods and reels down. Don't fish for a long. If you have a cottage lake, if you have a lake that you go to quite a bit, where you know what's going on down there, or you think you know what's going on down there, then just sit there, have a coffee, and watch your screen on side imaging, and watch everything, and then look, and then maybe go back over top of it again, go over twice, and you're going to start to see stuff like logs, like rocks, like fish. Andrew's saying sturgeon. You can see walleye. You can see every species once you know what you're looking for. The shadows start showing up on them, and with the new units like these, our new Garmin ultra high definition UHD units, like it's getting scary as to the picture that you see down there. So, but the slower you go, the better it is. So just at boom, idle speed, and just enjoy your coffee and watch that screen. And on all the units nowadays, whatever manufacturers you got, I'm pretty sure you can drop a waypoint on anything. So if you're looking at 50 feet out to the side, you touch your screen there, boom, you can put a waypoint at that exact spot. So if you see a rock that you want to fish or something to investigate later. Another thing you can do on side imaging, if you want to learn how, is if you're on really clear water, go in some shallow water. Go in less than 10 feet where you can see the bottom and still run your side imaging and start watching your screen. Then when you see something, turn your boat and go over and see what that is over there, 25, 30 feet over to your right. Say, what is that? And you go and you look down. Oh, that's what that looks like on my side image. It implants it in your head and you really learn to use it. But it's critical that you watch your screen and don't fish. Just get out there and learn. And then after that, it comes in very handy.
Just to take that one step further, Pete and I, several years ago when Panoptix, in fact, Panoptix wasn't even out on the market yet here in Canada. We were fortunate enough to be with Garmin at the time, which we still are, by the way. But so they sent a unit for us to kind of play around with before it was introduced to the market the following year. And I'll be very frank with you, when we first turned that puppy on, said, what? We said, what the hell is this? They got to be kidding. Like, what is this stuff? You know, we tried and we read the manuals and we talked to the techs at the headquarters and they explained, and we'd go out and we'd try it, and we just couldn't understand. We couldn't interpret is really the bottom line. And so we took the concept that Pete was just talking about, where you go in shallow water and run it around boulders and different forms of structure so you can get a better idea of what that image looks like. We did it in an area where we knew we had fish. Now there's a great Panoptix image there. And we went into an area that had a ton of carp and smallmouth bass in shallow water, in 8 to 14 feet of water, and no obstruction, just big open area, and with all of these fish cruising, schools of these fish cruising around. And we're very familiar with that particular body of water. And so we said, let's go there. And the water's clear, by the way, crystal clear. Let's go there and position the boat where we can see schools of fish going across our signal of these particular, the Panoptix sonar or transducer. And so we did. And that's where we first learned how to use these units, was to actually see from above and then look at the screen and interpret what that was, right? You could see it. There's that 20-pound carp going by. Oh, there it is. Comes in the screen. Sometimes you need the reassurance of truly having confidence in what you're seeing is real. And that's the way we had to do it. And then ever since that day, then things just exploded, because now we were able to take that experience and basically pinpoint everything on that screen now to what we had actually witnessed and seen with our own eyes. And now we can pretty much tell you everything. And I'm not saying it's the only way, but man, it is a really cool, quick way to get yourself familiar with what you're seeing. So try and utilize it if you have any.
That was fun.
Do that.
That was fun that we did that day. And by the way, Steve, just to let you know, you showed a picture of live scope. If you can find on that same page somewhere very close, it'll be just Panoptix a sub. We can show the difference if you put that up next as Ange and I are talking. But yeah, and the nice thing what Ange and I did there is you could literally tell then a 20-pound carp compared to a 3-pound smallmouth. You'd say, oh, wow, that's how big or how small or whatever they look. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's confusing too. What's a big fish look like? What's a small fish? So it was great because they get the same body shape basically. So you see a 20 or 30 pounder go by, and then you see a little smallie go by. You say, oh, wow, look at that. Look at the difference. You know what I mean? So that's exactly what I was saying with the side imaging when Nancy just brought that up. That's what we did that day. We went out learning. We dropped the rods and pointed the transducer around and said, okay, what's this? What's that? What's the other? So,
you said something earlier on, Pete, and for me, I just took it for granted, but I just want to go back to it for just a second, and you'll agree. Pete and I spend a lot of time on the water, not fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, we're blessed with the opportunity to spend a lot of time on the water, and I know most of you just have that amount of time. So every minute that you have out there, you want to maximize it, right? But sometimes putting the rod down or leaving it in the rod locker can be some of your best experiences out there. And we spend a lot of time looking and interpreting and trying to understand, even if it's just equipment, a new piece of equipment on the boat. Well, we just spend a day or two just with that piece of equipment and trying to understand how it works rather than fishing. A lot of people, and I tell this to folks who want to learn bait casting, and this is a really good example. One of the things I tell people that want to learn bait casting is do not attempt to learn bait casting in a fishing environment. You'll never learn it. Guarantee you will never learn it. Bait casting needs to be, for sure, the very first experience, it's got to be dry land. You can't even be on water if you really want to grasp bait casting and use it the way you're supposed to use it. You don't even go near water. And then when you're ready with it to go on water, not fishing, you're casting, you're targeting, you're feeling, you're trying to learn all the little nuances about this new form of fishing without being distracted with the notion that I have to catch fish. I want to catch fish. And we do that a lot. I'd like to see how many hours a day we spend during shoots or during tournament fishing or just out fishing without casting.
Yeah.
Just, you know.
Yep, absolutely. There was one as you're looking to answer. There's a good sonar looking from Fishing Mutt. You see that one from Fishing Mutt? I'm going to go back further, but if you look at that, scroll up Fishing Mutt, you'll see that one about sonar. I got Jason March. He saw I used a mercury propane on brook trout shoot by Massey, and he asked how did it handle, and whatever comments could be helpful. To me, it was amazing. We had to bring it in on an ATV, the motor and everything in the ATV. So obviously right there, you got no gas sloshing around, whatever. I mean, we brought the propane tank. It's a barbecue propane tank. You stick it in the back of your boat, in the back corner of your boat, and it's a barbecue hose that goes right to your propane outboard. I think it's a 5 horsepower motor. And for the most part, it ran flawlessly. And mine was a prototype. The one I was using was a prototype. So they probably even got it dialed in better now. Because that one we had to give back to Mercury. They wanted us to try it out and let them know. And it ran, for the most part, flawlessly, just like any gas motor ran for me. It trolled down perfect. It did not stall out for the most part. Sometimes it took 2 or 3 pulls to get it started back up. But for the most part, it was one pull. It trolled perfectly. It ran, for whatever 5 horsepower is going to give you flat out. It's not a lot of speed, but it ran great. I think they were designed more, maybe, Ange, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they were designed for sailboats more than anything, is what they brought that idea into, from what I know. And then because they didn't want to carry the fuel if they don't have a gas tank, they'd have that. But for fishermen, my God, this thing, and clean, and it was so cool. Smelling propane. Normally you smell gas, and you smell the gas or outboard and always pour it. You smell just a little whiff of propane when you start up and say, wow, is that ever different? It's so cool. But it's so clean of power too, right? And to me, it was on a balance. It was the same as gas, honestly.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is I don't think it's quite there yet, for the simple reason that in terms of consumption versus volume of fuel, we're still at about the same point.
Yeah.
I think you can get to a level with those propane engines where you're consuming much less fuel. Then it becomes really cool to be able to, portage into lakes that you are allowed to use a combustible engine, but rather than bring gasoline in, because the inherent problem with gasoline when you're filling and transporting, there's the risk of polluting a body of water with gas, right? When I mean gas, I mean gasoline. So I think we're there. It's kind of cool to have that kind of, that kind of technology available even today. For a cottager who is, conscious of the environment, I think it's kind of cool because you don't have to have gas at the cottage anymore. You don't have to worry about spilling any of the gasoline.
There's where the sailors are using it. He's got it on his boat and he's got it on his little dinghy too, right? So they're great ideas for that kind of stuff. Then you don't have to carry any fuel at all. They rarely use motor power unless they have to for docking, etc. But it's great. I think there's a future for it for sure. It's very cool, and it was so nice to have zero fuel drippage or any of that oil that's slicking the water and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So,
Chris wants to know. Great to have you on online questions. Do you think the fishing lodges? This thing keeps moving on me. Do you think fishing lodges will be open in June? How can we, if social distancing is in effect, can rent 12? Quit moving. 12 separate cottages. So I guess what he's asking is, in my opinion, do I think that we'll be ready to go back to business as usual at fishing lodges by June? My opinion, God forbid, I know I got in trouble for having an opinion a few weeks ago, but I'll give you my opinion. I would say no. I think July would be a little more realistic, but I don't think June is going to happen. We're just not there yet. And I'm saying July as the eternal optimist, because there's a lot of stuff that has to happen for most of these lodges to open. Keep in mind, first of all, there's a whole staffing issue. I was having a conversation with a lodge owner 2 days ago, and a lot of people don't understand that the first couple of months in the season is all about working the bugs out of the camp. You know, whether it's staff issues, they're implementing new kitchen things and housekeeping issues, and there's all kinds of things that happen at a camp that we don't even realize go on. Well, that happens in that first 4-week period, 5-week period. Well, they've lost that because they're not at these camps. These camps are still closed. So in order for us to be up and running in July, it means they need to get the go-ahead in the next week or two in order to be able to open up in July. So I hate to be a pessimist, but June is definitely out of the question. And then there's another issue, and this is probably even more important, is that there's a lot of bookings that have already been made for May and June and July. And it's a scramble for these operators to try and figure out, how do I fit them in? I've only got this short window of opportunity. I've only got these 4 months of operation, and I've lost the first 2 months. So I've got to squeeze in the last 2 months. I got to be running 100% full in order to try and cram everything in. It's going to be a nightmare. It's the only thing I can tell you. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. And I don't wish it on anybody to be a lodge owner right now. It goes under the category. So you think you got problems? You should try being one of them right now. And then compound that by being an American. A lot of these operators are from the US. The owners of these places are American. Of course, they can't even come across the border. So it's crazy. Crazy.
Got one from Fishing Mutt. He's tried to get in there a couple of times. I'm not seeing arches on my sonar. Is it because of transducer positioning, setting, or both? Well, first off, he's talking about this traditional screen, because that's where you see your arches on your as fish come up, show up on that. So it could be your transducer positioning. I mean, it's got to be as flat as possible. You got to have a nice and parallel with the bottom. That's the first thing and foremost. Settings. Maybe not so much. If you're running auto, you should be getting arches. I would say it's probably more of your speed of your boat to have the proper speed, because if fish are sitting still, then your boat is moving. Then you're going to go over, and that fish is going to start. The signal is going to start. It's going to go up, and then it's going to go down. So the speed of the boat is quite critical. Usually a slow speed, not dead slow, but idle speed, 1 mile an hour, or 2 miles an hour, something like that. When you're going over fish that are up off the bottom at 1 mile an hour or whatever, you should be able to see those arches. As long as your transducer is flat to the bottom and you're about, let's say, 60 to 75% in your sensitivity up in that area, you should be able to see those arches. That's basically it. It should show on your traditional screen. If they're not showing up, if they're showing flat, it means the fish are swimming along with the boat. I mean, there's fish movement too, right? We're talking about dead still fish are the best arches too. So you got to keep all those into consideration. But if you keep looking, you're going to see them. You will have them set.
If you got a really narrow cone, because people don't realize, and we just went through this schooling over the last couple of years with Garmin. Talk about a multitude of transducers. I mean, it's mind-boggling. But each transducer basically has a different shape and size of cone. And if you've got a really narrow transducer, when you mount it on your boat, and I'm talking about for the most part smaller boats, 16, 18 foot boats. When you mount it on your boat, I mean, all you hear about is that it should be it should be on the same plane as the hull of your boat, right? It should be flush with the bottom of your hull. So your hull's sitting on a trailer. So you mount the transducer so it's flush with the back of the boat, wherever that placement is that you selected, and you mount it so that it's flush with the bottom of the boat. Well, the problem is that none of these boats, when you put them in the water, sit at that angle. So what's nice and level and flat on a trailer, you put that boat in the water, I'll bet you it's sitting like this. So you see what happens to your transducer at that point, right? You need to put the back of your boat, you need to float the back of your boat in the water. After you mounted your brackets, you need to float the back of that boat in the water. And you need to adjust that transducer so that when the boat is sitting level in the water, the transducer should be sitting flat with the plane of the surface. Otherwise, you're going to get all kinds of misreadings because of the angle. And what I said earlier on, the narrower that cone, the worse this becomes. So that might be also a problem why you're not getting nice clean hooks on that unit.
Some angle. Steven's got a picture there of different angles too. The wide angle transducer versus a narrow.
Yeah,
and the shallower you are, the shallower you are, the smaller the angle is too. The cone, we call it. So the degrees, I guess. There was one guy that agreed with you, Ange. Bait casting. I started my platinum fishing again. Started in my basement, moved to my backyard, then to the lake. You're exactly right. You know what I mean?
Perfect. Basement, backyard, lake. And I'll bet he wasn't fishing when he went on the lake until he got the hang of it. So, by the way, quick shout out to Greg T from Georgia. That's
that's awesome.
Yeah.
We need more of that. Okay. A lot of learning to bait cast on the backyard stuff. Everybody's laughing about it, and that's what they all do. That's good. That's good. And it's good. You know what else? As Andrew's looking for a question, if you want to learn now, get a little bit more into the pitching thing the bass guys do, pitching and flipping and all that kind of stuff, but pitching more than anything. Do that in your backyard. Set up some buckets, some cans, some targets, and start, especially during this pandemic, you're sitting at home if you're not working, go to your backyard every day and make 100, 200 little flips and pitches, put a chair out there and shoot it underneath the chair. You wouldn't believe how good you can get sitting in your backyard doing that. I haven't done it yet this year. I do it every spring because the thing about being a Canadian and being a bass fisherman is a lot different than an American. The Americans, like our Georgia buddy there, they can fish all year. For us, we have a very limited. We got, end of June to end of November-ish, like that. And a lot of that is not this little pitching and flipping. So you get kind of rusty when you're through the wintertime. So it's nice to get in that backyard and practice. So that's another little tip for you to set your targets up, and you get pretty good at it too.
By the way, I really like what's going on here. A lot of guys are asking questions of themselves and getting answers within the group, and that's fantastic. And that's what the whole purpose of this thing is, so that we can all help each other. Calvin, what's Calvin got here? How dangerous is a propane-powered engine as opposed to gasoline? Dangerous in the sense of fuel?
I don't know if it would be any more dangerous or not.
I don't think it is. It's in terms of gasoline combustible, propane combustible. I don't think
there's no propane going to sit in the bottom of your boat. Gas could sit in the bottom of your boat. You could drop your lighter and hit that and fire. It might be maybe safer. I don't know. I don't know what to say on that one.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
Greg T.
A lot of border guys are asking about the border openings too. I mean, I obviously don't know anything about that right now, unless we get some inside information. We haven't got anything right now. So, but snow, what is that? Our guy from Georgia, Greg, snow, what is that? I'm from Savannah.
Good one. Greg Brown, you use the moon phase for better catch results. So let me tell you about the moon. We've spent a lot of time working with this one. And in fact, I've got a blog 3/4 done sitting on my desktop for about a month, maybe 6 weeks now, that's waiting for me to finish it. But moon phase is a very interesting tool for anglers. So in our particular case, we go out and fish pretty much every week. We have assignments that we have to, perform, and we don't have the luxury of saying, oh, geez, maybe I'll go out the week after or 2 weeks later, or we're out every week. So you're probably, well, so you don't use the moon. Well, we do use the moon. We use it a lot. I would say we use it probably as much as any other tool that we have available to us. But we don't determine whether we're going to go fishing or not. More likely, we'll use the moon phase to determine how we're going to go fishing. Now, most anglers have the luxury of being able to use the moon phase to determine when they're going to go fishing. So we don't have that. But it really makes a difference. If you, not to general fishing, but if you're, for example, if you're a trophy hunter, if you're looking for a personal best, then you should be following the moon phase religiously. You should put yourself in a position to succeed based on the moon's influence on that animal, meaning that you had better be on the water in the prime spot, a spot that you're very familiar with, or a body of water that's known for trophy fish, for example. You need to book yourself or schedule yourself to be on that water during that moon phase. And I'm not talking just the moon phase in terms of a day, but an hour. And if you do that, your chances of making contact with the fish of a lifetime improve by 1,000%. Having said that, most of us included, we don't use moon phases to determine when we should be going on the water. But you should, especially if, I hear people complaining all the time, I just don't have the time to figure all this stuff out. That's why, our GPS coordinates, our hotspot coordinates on the Fishing Canada show become such a valuable tool to our viewers, because we can eliminate a lot of downtime by just telling you exactly where we were this week on our show. And you don't have to go and search all over the lake. Go to that area, put the GPS coordinates in your sonar, in your GPS, and start fishing. The moon phase is exactly that. Okay, except it tells you when you need to be on the water and the time of day, and it's huge. How it works is still, jury's out on that one. There's a lot of different theories. Obviously, it has to do with the gravitational pull of the moon and its effect on fish. Some say that it's the light, but then it's not. The full moon phase is not the only one that attracts fish. A new moon will do the same thing. So you really need to study it, and it's a little more complex than just what meets the eye. But I highly recommend that you invest some time learning about moon phases, because it's critical.
Go on to some muskie fishing sites. The muskie guys have got it dialed in more than anybody else out there. No offense to the fly fishing, the trout guys, whatever. The muskie guys live and die by the majors and minors, and each day by the moon phases. They live for it. They will sit in a cottage for hours upon hours and then get out there the hour before the major, through the major, an hour after, and then be done for the day. Some of these guys will do that. They look at these moon phases and they live by that. The better the musky fishermen are, the more they will live by the moon phases. So I don't even know any websites right now that would cater to that. But I think anyone that's good, any of the musky guys are good, you'll see moon in there somewhere written down, and you'll start looking at it and saying, oh my God, did these guys take this to the next level? And they do it because you know what? They're after the ultimate predator. They're not after a 36-inch muskie. They're after a 56-inch muskie. And like Ann said, when you're banking on catching the biggest fish in the lake, I mean, there's something triggering that fish to feed every day. There's something working with that. So put all the odds in your favor. Muskie guys, they do it very well.
There was a question just up on the screen, Stephen, and you took it down. Oh, there we go. Should we open up bass season year round down south? Now, I'm assuming you're talking about here in the province of Ontario, because up north, of course, they now have bass season open year round. It's a catch and release fishery. But what my opinion is, now, once again, don't get pissed off at me. You asked, and I'm going to tell you. My answer is no. It is just, I would love it. As a bass angler, I would love to be able to go out anytime my little heart desires and go fish, practicing catch and release, because that's all we do anyways. But I really do believe, I honestly believe that every time we interfere with a fish that is in the spawning cycle, whether it's late pre or early post spawn, I really think that we hurt its chances of successfully perpetuating its species. Might not be totally disrupting the spawn from that particular creature, but I think we have some effect on it. Certainly when they're on the beds and in full spawn, we have effect for sure. So my thinking is that the current method that we have at regulating our bass seasons here in Southern Ontario that are based on a date as opposed to the environment is totally wrong as well. Here we base it on a particular period, a day on the calendar. That will be opening or closing of the season. I think that's wrong anymore. Our weather has been changing at such an alarming rate year in and year out. And it's so unpredictable. It could be warmer, colder than the previous year, could fluctuate 5 to 10 degrees. Pete and I have been on the water early in the year where we've had a 10-degree difference from morning to afternoon. And that impacts a lot of the spawning activity. So I think our current setup is wrong. I certainly would not like to see a totally open season. Although as an angler, as a bass angler, that'd be great. I'd love that. But realistically, I don't think it's sustainable. You know, the folks up north, keep in mind, and I talked to Gordy about this, Gord Pizer, this on a regular basis. He lives on Kenora, or on Lake of the Woods in Kenora. And, you know, we talk about it regularly. His opinion is the same as mine, and that is that he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it one little bit. Because somewhere down the road, our kids are going to suffer for it. Maybe not us, but if we keep interrupting these spawning cycles, and keep in mind, these are different on every lake. So it's not like we can look at this as sort of a national blueprint. When we do that, I think the long-term effect is going to be negative. There's not going to be anything positive about it at all. But our system we have here, I don't like it either, because some years we go out there and some fish are still in early post-spawn or still in full spawn mode. So changes are needed. My opinion. Don't get mad at me, please.
And they got the proposal for Zone 20. That's coming out. There was a vote. I don't know if it's closed now. Zone 20 was talking about that. So what Zone 20 is basically Great Lakes, Bay of Quinte, so a certain area of Ontario. They're going to try and experiment. And one of them was to actually extend the smallmouth bass opener for 2 more weeks, which would then, but like Ann says, would probably put those fish that much further. They'd be off their beds and they'd be probably away from their beds, which is a good thing because right now, let's say, maybe not on all of Zone 20, but on Lake Ontario, for instance, out in the Duck Islands, we'll say. It's a set of islands out in the middle of Lake Ontario. Water's really cold there compared to everywhere else in the province, basically. Those fish are on beds well into opening week of the season. So as Ann said, our calendar of the third Saturday in June, it opens up. Well, that full week at least, there's a bunch of big smallmouth on beds. Now, responsible anglers will say, I'm not going to fish for those. I'll go for those guys that are posts. I'll go to those fish that are whatever. Let's see a tournament's going on. You see a 5-pounder down there. You tell me that guy's not going to fish for that 5-pounder. It's on a nest, a big male hanging on the nest. He's gonna try and catch that fish. You know what I mean? I'm a tournament fisherman. I've done it for many, many years. It's just that you're fishing for 50 grand, 100 grand. You're going to try and catch every fish you can. If it's out of season, you can't do that. So that's a good idea what they got going on there. They're also talking about doing that year-round catch and release in Zone 20 and probably do it as an experiment, which is not, to me, is not a bad idea because it's only one zone. You have to remember the main populace of Ontario is in Southern Ontario. So these northern anglers like Gord Pizer, the guy that Andrew was talking about, all those guys up there, they've been used to bass season being open all year. And when they want to keep fish, they're going to keep walleye, they're going to keep some trout and all that stuff. They really don't keep bass that much to begin with. So they're very responsible for that. You go down to Southern Ontario where we don't get a lot of other species, let's say, and bass are pretty easy to catch. People like eating fish. You know, they're going to maybe start abusing that system. Yeah, it's a catch and release season, but, oh, I didn't know, sir. I'm sorry. And there's not enough conservation officers around, so it could hurt. I think the Zone 20 thing will be a good experiment to see what happens. And you know what, then? It gives us, as Southern Ontario anglers, if you want to go fishing early in the year, it gives you the chance. Go to Zone 20 if it's legal and give it a try. But all the other lakes around still have, good, strong restrictions in them. So.
And just to take that one step further before we close that question off, because I think it's really important. It's vital for a healthy bass fishery, which we have right now, by the way, in Southern Ontario. A lot of people, when I put up that argument, say, yeah, but, look at Florida. They fish them right off the beds, constantly fishing them off the beds. Their populations of bass are great, and they are. You're absolutely right. Okeechobee is a classic example, probably the most pressurized bass water on the planet, and it's great. But you know something? Bass in Okeechobee can spawn up to 6 times a year. Roland Martin has told me he's caught spawning bass in August, in September. Why? Because they have this great climate. The opportunity for spawning on Okeechobee will span a 10-month period. There's only 2 months of the year where it's absolutely impossible for those fish to spawn. Well, we don't have that here. Our window is this big. If they don't get their job done in that little wee opportunity, it's over. It's done. It's not like they can just, we'll postpone it, move it down the timeline. No, it's gone for the year. So that's the biggest problem with having an open season, catch and release only. I just don't think it works. And as responsible anglers, I know I'll probably get in trouble for this one, but as responsible anglers, we need to put it upon ourselves. We need to be fisheries managers. Each and every one of us needs to manage the resource. We can't rely on somebody else doing it for us. We need to be managers, good managers, if we want to sustain this incredibly healthy fishery that we've got here in this part of the province, for sure. Snap swivels.
Back to the technical stuff. I like it. When do you use or not use a snap swivel, a swivel, snap, swivel, and loop knot? There you go.
Loop knot is probably the most underutilized knot in a fisherman's arsenal, probably because most of us can't tie one, or at least don't think we can tie one. It's a very simple knot. What a loop knot does, it allows you to have the same effectiveness as a good snap. I'm not talking about the conventional snap that's got a bit of a V shape to it. I'm talking about a round snap, because that'll allow that bait to have its natural action as opposed to being tied on directly onto a line. Well, you can do the same thing with a line, and that's what the loop knot is that question refers to. But when to use a snap and when not. I hate having hardware on my line. Pete, how many times do I?
Oh my God!
And you give me hell because you can't fish without some kind of hardware. We're fishing for big toothy critters. I hate it. I hate it with a passion. I'm not confident. I'll guarantee you, if I have to tie hardware on my line, I'm fishing at 60% confidence level, because I believe it's going to affect the way my lure works, and it's going to be visible. So I hate using it. You use them. So
I use quite a bit. I mean, here's my deal with let's say a snap versus a snap swivel. Okay, let's go to that point of it like that. I would use a snap swivel on on a spinner, an inline spinner, like a walleye, like a Maps or something like that. If you don't tie a swivel before that Maps, you're going to have the worst line twist within half an hour. Your day will be done, because your line is going to be, if you're using the spinning gear especially, your line is going to be starting to twist into the bail. You're going to get a catching of that loop in your bail and your line. It's horrible. So by a spinner, an inline spinner, the blades are spinning, but the whole bait spins too. Okay, let's be honest there. And it will not stop doing that. So the swivel will stop. Let's say the swivel still. This is what happens with that. If it's not, then all that's doing is twisting your line up. It's just totally twisting everything up. So you have to use a swivel when you're running. Well, I have to when I'm running an inline spinner. If I'm running a minnow bait, I said Rapala, so I'll stick with Rapala there. If I'm running a Rapala, it doesn't spin. It has a more of a side-to-side wobbling action. Then I would never use a swivel with that bait, but I would use a snap. Again, says either a snap or a loop knot. I don't tie a loop knot. I don't do it. Probably should, but I don't. But I'd rather use a snap, because then I can change baits, I can change colors, I can change sizes real quick. So I use that snap on there because, again, it gives that freedom that Andrew was talking about. There's some freedom on there. So the swivel is only there when you have a bait that spins and will twist your line. Otherwise, you don't really need a swivel on there.
A lot of people use it for convenience, as you just said, right? They can put a bait on and off. If they're changing baits a lot, it makes sense. It makes sense. But even there, a little pain worth more gain by tying a loop knot, breaking it off, putting a new one on.
I've never used a loop knot out in the field, honestly.
There was a question that went by. I can't find it now, but it's worth just taking a minute to and we'll come back to Jay March's question here in a second. And the question was, how come you and all the other fishing shows always depict fishing from a boat and not from shore? Don't you know that most of us can't afford a boat? That was the question. And I looked at it and said, you know what? That's a really good question. And we should address it. So, and stay on the screen with me, Pete. I hate it when you hide. Stay on the screen with me on this.
Don't make me hide. Just don't make me hide. Keep your mouth shut if you have to.
I'm throwing that out there. Two reasons we use a boat. Reason number one, and probably I'll be honest with you, probably the most important one is that we have one of the greatest partners and relationships with a company called Prince Craft Boats that anybody in any corporation could ever dream of having. They've been with us over 26 years. They've been our partner. So that's reason number one. If we're fishing from shore, then we're giving the audience an opportunity to see the products that this great partner makes. And without this great partner, we don't have a Fishing Canada show. We don't have the opportunity to do what we're doing right now. And we lose sight of that. Sometimes viewers lose sight of how important that sponsorship partner is to what we do. So that's reason number one. Having said that, we have snuck in the odd shore episode throughout our careers. But the second most important reason we use a boat is because we need to move. You know, when you're shooting a television show, like as you alluded to, all the fishing shows fall into this category. Well, when you're shooting a TV show, if you don't move, you die. We have to shoot something. When we have a crew out in the field, we have to maximize our time. We have to go to the fish, except in the case of carp fishing, where we're calling fish to us from shore. But in all other forms of fishing, we need to go to where the fish are. Because if they're not here right now, we can't sit here all day waiting. They're not here. We need to go find them. You can't do that without a boat. So number one, our partnership and sponsorship. And number two, mobility. We have to move. Pete and I will fish, a lot of times we'll fish a shoreline for the boat when we could easily have, accessed that fishing spot from shore. We'll fish it with a boat because we can position ourselves. We can move up and down that spot. When the fish move up that point, we can move with them. It's just, for what we do for a living, it's a must. Having said that, it's great going outshore fishing. It's absolutely outstanding. So don't let it deter you.
Yeah, the key point was Prince Craft's a great sponsor of ours, and we're going to show them every time we can. I mean, an ice fishing show, we don't shoot a whole lot of ice fishing shows. We haven't, shot in anything in a long time. We can't put a Prince Craft on the ice. When you can dig a hole big enough to put the Prince Craft in there, maybe we could shoot a show like that. But otherwise, we're not doing them a whole lot of favors. So we get what you want to see, but you got to please get what we have to do too. So I saw one here. What's that?
Besides, is there anything better than screaming down a lake at?
That's not fishing. Your speed. You're racing. Then what's the matter with you?
Oh, you're right.
There's a guy here. I want to. Wayne Morrow. Wayne's been on here saying quite a bit. He says they must have been talking about it a little bit earlier. They're talking about a Palomar knot. I think about a guy who said that. What do you think about a Palomar knot? He says it's okay, but sort of weak compared to others. Wayne, I disagree with you on that one. I think the Palomar is one of the strongest knots. It's been proven one of the strongest knots. And if you're breaking them, then you're tying them wrong, or something's going wrong with that, because braid, mono, fluorocarbon, you tie a Palomar knot to your bait, it's one of the best knots that I've ever used. I used to tie the trilene knot. I used to tie all those knots. I use Palomar almost exclusively now because it's that good. Wet your line, wet your mono or your fluorocarbon. You have to wet braid, but the reason you wet your line before you tie a knot is not just to make it smoother. It's to actually allow it to cool down, because even a tiny little pull, when you're pulling all those strands together on your fluorocarbon, you're creating heat in there. That weakens your line. So if you wet your line with just a little saliva, with water, whatever, it cools it down. You tighten it up, and then it dries away, and it's a lot cooler. So Palomar knot, my opinion, it's the best one to tie a lure to. So
I don't know the best, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I'll give you that.
Pretty damn good.
By the way, is anybody surprised out there how much we disagree? You should hear us on a boat.
That's good, because you know what? It shows we have confidence in certain things, right? And this is what fishing is all about, is confidence. So if Andrew's tying a trilene knot or double to the eye, whatever knot, and I'm tying a Palomar knot, and we're both very confident with it, and we're both not breaking off, beauty. That's what we're happy with, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, makes you fish better.
Madison Bolton lives in Temiskaming shores and was wondering if we're planning on making a trip up there again anytime soon.
Yeah, I just did.
Do we have any advice on bank fishermen?
There you go. Well, if we come up and we're going to fish Temiskaming, we're going to be on our boat. I hate to break the news to you. That's 100 kilometers of lake. That is a big, I think it's 100 kilometers. Yeah, it's a huge body of water. So we were talking to, I was talking to a buddy that one of my old buddies bought a new lodge up there. So we were talking about maybe getting up there in the near future, but obviously right now it's not going to happen, not this year for sure. But great body of water for sure. Temiskaming's a really neat body of water for walleye because you've got some shallow fish, you've got fish that relate to sand, you've got fish that are relating to current, and then you've got those big open water fish that are relating to the deep water. 300 feet of water, and you got schools of walleye out there, and then you go down to the far end of the narrows, and they're in that current area. So it's a great body of water. I won't get into it right now, but we'd like to come back because there's a lot of good fishing to be had there for walleye, especially, and some big fish too on Temiskaming.
Have you guys ever used a Ned rig? Yes. It's a Steve Hussey says I used it last year for smallmouth bass, and it was great. Yeah.
Ned rig is awesome. It's one of those kind of a newer thing again that's come out, and for anybody that doesn't know what a Ned rig is, just look it up online. You can't miss it now. It's just a tiny little finesse bait with a tiny little head that stands kind of straight up. Depends on the brand that you have. It's kind of the ultimate finesse bait. It really does work in a lot of conditions. So smallmouth, largemouth too, but smallmouth is a killer on for sure. So. Just
to go back to the prior question in terms of whether we're going to go to Temiskaming or not. Right now, and I just want to share this with you. For the first time in our history, we have not got a single thing scheduled for this year. Normally, by this time of year, our whole season has been filled out with location shoots, and we're booked from generally mid-May to the end of September, maybe early October by now. And we know exactly what's going on. We have nothing in the books. We don't know what's going on. And I was speaking to somebody earlier on this morning about that. It's going to be an interesting year for us, for the Fishing Canada shoot I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because we don't know. We don't know when we're going to be on the road. We don't know when we can travel. We don't know when locations are going to open to us. We don't know when it's safe to take our crew out. Right now, everybody's hunkered down at home, right?
Yeah.
It's very.
We've been talking to lodges, and they have no idea. Just like Andrew was saying earlier, they have no idea if they're even going to open up this year. So they can't have us there. So it's crazy.
It's nuts. Hopefully we will. If not, we'll just do more of this. That's all. What do we got?
There's another guy asking about the bed fishing there. About when will bass be off the beds and be finished with spawning so that they won't be disturbed and pulled off the beds accidentally and therefore hurt the bass fishery. Well, that goes with what Angelo was saying. It depends on the climate, the area you're in Ontario or on Canada. And then it just depends on lake by lake. It's different every lake too, right?
Each lake is different. As you know, Pete, same lake can have 3 different spawns going on.
Yeah.
Different parts of the lake at 3 different times.
Absolutely.
So it really does vary. There's so many variables. And honestly, a lot of them we don't even understand yet. But we do know temperature is a trigger. We do know light is a trigger.
Moon phase.
We know moon phase is a trigger. There's all sorts of water levels are a trigger. There's all sorts of triggers that when you combine them all, it's almost like the perfect storm. And when it happens, and that's why a lot of us have witnessed where the spawn starts and then just as quickly it stops and they fall off. They come off the beds. They fall back to deeper water. Something went wrong in that variable. One of the variables went wrong, and the fish stops immediately. So everything has to happen. It's a perfect storm. And the last, 7, 8 years, that perfect storm is coming at a different time. It's not happening in and around the date of opening for that species. So that's why I'm a little concerned about the way we do it here. Here, it's just, to me, it's like throwing a dart against the board. You almost, and I know, for anybody listening that's with MNRF or a scientist that's involved in any of the process, how difficult it would be to do that. I know that. That's why we have a fixed date. But we need to start thinking a little more. We need to be a little more open-minded about it. And I think, as I mentioned before, the angler has to be a part of the solution, not part of the problem. The solution would be that we manage our own fish. We all buy into, like we did in the mid 80s when we started talking about catch and release. We had to buy into it, and it took years. It took part of 2 decades to get that message home, eh, Pete?
Oh yeah, that was let's face it, the old school way. My dad's way of fishing is that you're not going out there just to go fishing. You're going out there to go fishing, you have fun, and bring them home and eat them too, right? It's all part of the package. So you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But from doing that 70, 80 years ago to this day, still doing that, there's something wrong with it, because now you're going to see a lot less fish of all species.
It's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. We have better anglers. We have more anglers today. It's not sustainable. So what I'm saying is that we should now take that philosophy and attitude that we had towards catch and release fishing and now start applying it to seasonal fishing. And, you know, as a we'll take bass as an example, because that's the one we're talking about. But as a bass angler, I should police myself. I know enough about bass fishing to know when those fish are going to be in some part of that spawning cycle. And so I should not go fish them when I know that they're in that mode on my particular lake. I should be the one that says, no, that's not for me. Not an M&R ruling. It should be me. But we don't do that. We don't do that, right? We wait for that date, and then come hell or high water, we're on the water and we're fishing them because it's legal. And that's what I'm saying. I think in time you're going to find we're going to change that. We as anglers are going to change that. I'm saying, well, no. I mean, Pete and I, we went last year or the year before up to Northern Ontario to sample some of this early season bass fishing. And it was all we could do in a lot of cases. It was all we could do to force ourselves to fish in a body of water that we knew was in some kind of spawning mode. And, you know, we would go by fish after fish after fish because we knew that fish was at that point in pre-spawn where contact with that fish would stop it from doing its thing. And we just need to take that sort of attitude more so here in Southern Ontario, if it's possible, and just not fish for a species that is trying to perpetuate its kind, right? I know it's easier said than done, but it's my little rant and it's my opinion, and there you go.
We got, I know if it's Frank from Ugly Pike, but one of the boys from Ugly Pike, or both of them, are saying they just canceled their trip to Lac Seul. They had obviously a large trip up to Lac Seul this year. They just had to cancel it, you know, and probably later in the summer, I'm assuming, you know, a good musty time, August, whatever. Got a good one from Calvin again there, Ange. It says, hey, Pete, in your time on the water over the years, have you and Angelo ever been pulled over by conservation officers? Absolutely. We still get it.
A lot.
We get it quite a bit, and we get OPP as well. We get both of them, and for the most part, I mean, if you have everything, if you have your license all dialed in, and you have your boat all legal and all that, there's no reason to worry about the conservation officers coming over because you're doing everything right. You know what I mean? I had an instance two or 3 years ago where me and a buddy and his buddy went opening day bass fishing, and the CO come over and pulled us over, and we were, you know, hamming it up and having a good time. And then he asked for the licenses. So he knows they know who Ange and I are, but they still ask for our license. They say, I know you got it, but I got to see it. So we give it to them and he'll show them the license every time. And then my other buddy, he gave the license over, and then the other guy gave his license over, and the cop or the CO looked and says, that's not your license. That's whatever it was, a tag or whatever it was from last year or something like that. And the guy goes, not? Yeah. So he didn't have an active license he had last year. So the guy knew that he thought, or he figured he was telling the truth. We figured he was telling the truth. We didn't know for sure. And that conservation officer actually gave him 24 hours or 48, I can't remember what it was, to go out, buy a license, and then email him the copy of the license, which the guy did. Now, that said, a conservation officer can charge you instantly if you don't have your license in your pocket and you have it at the cottage, you have it somewhere else. If you have a legal license but don't have it on you, they can charge you for not carrying your license on board. So remember that. So when you're fishing, no matter where you are, if you need a license, you have to have it on you at all times. You might get a break like my buddy did, but for the most part, and they don't want to charge you. They really don't. I mean, they might take a look, and that was opening bass day, so they didn't even have to look in the live well because all species were open then. He knew we weren't going to be killing 18 bass, and it was early in the morning anyway, so they're good in that sense. Another little tip I'm going to give you, and Ange and I, Catch Your Limit and Limit Your Cast, we started that. I think we also started in Canada, wearing your life jackets all the time, wearing your PFDs all the time, these inflatables. Well, I've been pulled over by police. Me and a buddy, we talked about it last night. Talked to a buddy about this last night. It was years ago. The cop boat comes. We're just driving back to the cottage, and this cop boat comes right up beside us. Pull over. Oh, okay, like that. Pull it down like that. The cop did recognize me, but in the same sense, I said, okay, do you want to see all my safety equipment and all that? And what he said to me, and really surprised me, he said, no, you guys are wearing your life jackets. Nobody does that. If you guys are wearing your life jackets, I can guarantee you have all the safety gear in your boat. He just hands down said, we're being responsible by wearing the jackets. So he gave us not a break. He just didn't have to go through the boat and didn't have to go through all that hassle. So by wearing your PFDs, especially the inflatables, a lot of the cops see that, they just say, have a good day. They know you're doing everything right. So keep things like that in mind.
I think the most traumatic experience that I could ever recall with the law was several years ago. I think it was our first trip to go tuna fishing on the east coast of Canada.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? And so here we are in the middle of the ocean, literally can't see anything, no shore, no nothing. We're out here fishing, and we hook up with the tuna. Now, the regulations are that the minute you hook up, the captain has to call in the hookup, has to call it into DFO. There's a DFO radio that he needs to communicate that, we have a fish on. And the captain did not radio it in for whatever reason. I don't recall. Pete, do you remember why, Sandy?
Because he was a crusty old bastard. Get that fish on the boat.
You sound just like him.
Oh my God.
Anyways, we didn't know anything. We didn't know what was going on, but we got a fish going, and it's humongous. Well, at least we thought it was. It turned out that it was an 800-pound tuna, but it's big, and we're fighting the hell out of it. But we noticed, like, immediately in the fight, first of all, we heard the grumblings from the captain and the first mate, but we noticed on the horizon, from three different areas on the horizon, all of a sudden we saw these massive boats that are coming towards us. And the crew is saying, it's DFO. Did you call it in? No. Did you call it in? We knew we were in trouble because they're arguing as to who was supposed to call it in. And I don't know how they knew, but DFO knew that we had this tune on and it had not been called in. So needless to say, they came, they surrounded us, and over the loudspeaker, they told us that they were going to board. And they did. And it was like almost guns pulled. Hey, remember, Pete? They had two guards. They tied up beside us. Two of the boats tied up beside us. Both of them had two gunmen on the top of their boats, ready to go. There was two guys that came on board. The other three guys were all ready to jump into action. Yeah. It was tense. It was very tense. And all because we hadn't called the fish in. So DFO has very strict regulations that if you have a fish on, you need to let them know you have it on. And then if you land the fish, you need to then call it in and say, we've landed it. It's so size. We have put the tag in it because there's tags that are allocated to these fish. And so it has a serial number. And the minute that you have that fish on the line, there's a whole documentation process that has already started. And our captain ignored the most important one. That was to let them know we had a fish. And he was lucky, apparently, that he didn't get the book thrown at him. Yeah,
and the reason they're onto that, you got to think about it, because if we don't call it in, they're looking at us like poachers. We're poachers. You know what I mean? And a bluefin tuna is an endangered species. It is a protected species. I mean, you're allowed to catch them under very strict rules. So in their minds, okay, we just got ourselves some poachers today, boys. They're not going to go. If you think a poacher out on the ocean is not got a gun in his boat, then you're out of your mind, because I'll guarantee you every one of them has a gun in their boat if they're poaching out there. So they're for whatever reason, they have guns. So these DFO officers, they have to be armed and ready for anything like that. Once we explained ourselves, they were great with us. They did an interview with Ange on camera. It was great. But until then, here's another good comment here, Ange, I want to bring in. My buddy Brent just said, police can enforce the exact same laws as conservation officers. Police have the same authority under the FWCA as COs do. So cops can do anything that, and this is because he's a cop. This is my buddy, he's a cop. So just remember that. You think the cops can't do this and that and the other out there? Same thing as COs, and COs same as cops too.
By the way, I just want to throw this out there. You know, we hear about grumblings about COs and whatnot. In my opinion, we don't have enough. Huh?
I'm just saying conservation officers, for people that don't know what COs mean.
COs, yeah, conservation officers. My opinion, it's a thankless job. It's probably the most dangerous law enforcement occupation that you could ever choose to pursue. Very, very thankless. You take all kinds of abuse, and we don't have enough. And the reason we don't have enough because it's a really, really tough job to do. And so my hat goes off to these guys every time we see them out in the field. I pat them on the back because, man, I'll tell you, it's a job I would not want for sure.
Have you ever seen that TV show on? It's like Northwood's Law or Law or something. There's something that's people you should watch that to see what's going on out there, the amount of poaching that's going on, and what these guys have to deal with, and the lying that goes on that's out there. But yeah, like Ann says, thankless job, and thank you very much to every one of you guys that are out there doing that job and girls, because it's not easy for sure. So
Calvin says that you, as a former Navy man, you can see 12 miles with a set of binoculars or further on the ocean. 12 miles. He's saying they saw us. Obviously, they could see that we had a fish on, right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Steve says, remember, 100% of our licenses go to the MNR back into the fishery too, and that's true. People think, oh, they're using that money elsewhere. So, from what we've been told, at least from what we know, that money is going back into the conservation for whatever area you're in Canada. So, which is a great thing too. What else you got?
What do we got?
2 o'clock. We're getting close. They're probably getting close. We're going to go a little longer, but we'll maybe start to wind it a little bit.
There was one that I want to bring up that we were going to do if we had time this week, and I want to throw it out there, sort of not necessarily in closing, but towards the end of our program. And it's from Chris Jennings, Critter.
Critter.
With us. And he says he is a gun owner. So that's important right there. He is a gun owner. And he says, I applaud the government for banning assault rifles today, which was a couple of days ago.
Last Friday, I think, wasn't it?
That's right.
Last week.
I'm just wondering what the general consensus out there is. I've got mixed feelings about it, to be honest with you, because I believe that this has got nothing to do with wanting to keep our society safe, has everything to do with politics, has everything to do with hidden agendas, and nothing to do with really believing in their heart of hearts that if you keep law-abiding citizens from owning any type of gun, that it is somehow going to stop the criminals from owning those guns as well. I don't understand the concept.
Such a joke.
Probably the wrong guy to be asking this question of, but I gotta tap out on this one, because in as much as I would like to agree with you, Chris, you know, and if it was, if that ban on those particular assault weapons, if it was to curb gang violence and criminal activity by the underworld, then I'm all in 100%. But I know it's not. I know it has nothing to do with that. It's a step in the direction of removing all guns from good, honest, hardworking people who want the right to own those guns. That's what this is all about. It has nothing to do, because you know what? We could stop the gangbangers from committing crimes with guns very easily. It could be done over a course. I'll guarantee you, in the city of Toronto, within 24 months, you could go to zero gun violence. You know how? You take them off the street. You take it's not the gun that's the problem. It's the people using them. When you catch them, and they will get caught because they're not the brightest bulbs on the tree. Let's be honest about it. You're going to catch them all, but you got to keep putting them away. You can't let them back out. You catch them and out. That's catch and release. We do that for bass and all other fish because we want them to live on. We release them because we want them to perpetuate and grow in numbers and be healthy. We're doing the same thing with our criminal elements. Think about it. We're catch and release on criminals. So it's a sport. So what we're doing is practicing sport. I don't even know. We need to name the sport of catching criminals with guns, catching them, and then putting them back in the water. Say, there you go. Come back when you grow up. I'd like to catch you again. I'll put you away so my grandson can catch you later on. That's what we're doing with criminals right now. That's exactly what we're doing. So we need to stop that. That's the attitude that needs to change, not stopping law-abiding gun owners from having guns. They'll never hurt you. Those are not a problem.
There's a comment here that says nobody needs assault rifles. No one needs them.
And that's going to be the argument. Okay, but then take that one step further. Nobody needs a handgun.
The Liberal government needs to fix the court system, and they need to deal with the border. Yeah, okay, absolutely. Okay.
There you go. There you go. The court system is catch and release, catch and release, catch and release. Get rid of the judges. The first problem is that our system is completely off kilter. You commit a crime with a gun, you're gone. There's no, yeah, but no. You're out of here. Solve the gun problem. It's gone. Within 24 months, guarantee you, we'll have issues. But nobody will do that. Everybody's afraid of that. For what reason? I have no idea. You know, there's more law-abiding citizens in this country than there are criminals. Let's not lose sight of that. There's more of us than there is them. So being afraid to put them away is beyond my I can't even contemplate why we would be afraid.
This one guy says stabbings are up, ban knives.
Great.
Get everything. I mean, you're going to get all kinds of on this stuff, right?
Ban cars. Why don't we ban cars too?
Well, that's what Brent said earlier. He said, let's ban swimming pools. What did he say? Swimming pools and motorcycles. Motorcycles.
Let's just ban everything, and that's it. We're done. We don't have any more problems. Everything is a beautiful world. You can all sing Kumbaya all day long, and it's just a wonderful place to be. Well, it's not. Yeah. And we need to wake up. We need to wake up. So, yes, nobody needs an assault rifle because I'm not one of those people that have a passion for it.
Right.
So it's easy for me to make that call. I say, well, why would you want one? What are you going to do with one? But there are people who collect them. There are people who have a really.
I think they can shoot them at ranges too. If I'm not mistaken, right? The guys that go to ranges and shoot guns, like, I mean, that's a common thing with handguns. That's a very common thing. You know, these people have that for a hobby. They have that for their passion too. So it's not the good people that are killing people with guns. People, that's for sure. So.
Anyways, we're way off topic. It's apparently it's none of our business.
Well, no, somebody brought it up here, and we're talking about it here, and we're getting lots of responses on the side too. So it's, you know, it could be our business, kind of, maybe. Now we've got no questions left.
How about taking one last one, and we're out of here?
Okay, one last question. What do we got? Back to fishing, if we can, because this is we could always. Wow, there's a lot of assault rifle stuff going on here. As soon as we mentioned it, it's like, woo! So let's go. Is there anything still going on?
Now, if I dare write a blog about this, on the internet, can you imagine the backlash I would get?
You need like a real gun guy. You need Jack Summers to write a blog about it.
Yeah.
You need somebody that can.
Pete and I have got a really close friend who is a gun collector. Actually, we have several close friends who are gun collectors, but this one in particular comes to mind. You know, the most law-abiding, respectful, docile human being you'll ever want to meet. But he has a vault of rifles and guns because he loves them. He has a relationship with them. It's almost spooky, but perfectly safe. He's never going to harm you with any of those guns. Never going to harm me. He's never going to harm anybody with those guns.
Yeah, so, I got one here that maybe somebody else can answer. He asked, I lost it now, but I think I know. Oh, does A photo of your active license on your phone count when you show a conservation officer. It never used to. That might have changed now. Brent, you might, if you're listening now, buddy, if you know anything about that, a picture on your phone of your fishing license or hunting license, I'm going to assume. Does that count if you have it on your phone nowadays in this latest time?
I think it's got to be valid. I mean, we're accepting all sorts of identification on your phone.
So, right, and in cards and visas and whatever and all that stuff.
However, I don't think you can use it as an excuse to say I don't have my license with me. It's on my phone, but my batteries died last night, so I can't show you.
Right. Yeah. In the meantime, we're waiting for an answer on that. Answer your tube. There's another guy asking about your tube baits. Where can you buy your favorite spring pike tube?
Well, you mentioned it last week, right? When we were talking about those tubes.
Water Wolf lures.
Water Wolf lures are made here in the Belleville area. It's a Canadian manufacturer. Unbelievable product. Extremely expensive. Some stores do have it, but you can get them directly as well from them. So
yeah. And then when you go on their site, you're going to start seeing his Shadzillas. They've got an array of, and then they got the bass magnet lures too. They got a bunch of bass stuff, but their pike and musky stuff is amazing. You're going to start seeing all the different rigging. So check out the site, and you'll be amazed. And you know what? You're buying, if you're from Ontario, you're buying locally. You know what I mean? So you're helping them out. They do a really good. They've expanded really well. Mike and Mary, the two people that run it. And they started very small, and you should see the operation they got going now for their big giant tubes. And then they're going stacked up on these tube and they're coloring them, and it's really cool to see what they do. Fantastic.
All colors work as long as it's white.
Yeah, there you go. You have black ones too, though.
I know. I just do it because I need to put a second color in the box. But if I had only one color to go, she'd be white. Might be white with some flake in it.
You can save the license summary on your phone that shows everything.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Brent. That's it. I think we're going to call it a day. We want to thank you for joining us today. Here's a
good one. Here, let me just interrupt. Chris Hockley come back in. He says he was told yes as well, but they don't like passing them from boat to boat. If they drop your phone in the lake, good point. If they drop your phone in the lake, there's $1,000 phone. Hey, you just dropped my phone, conservation boy. So good point. Good point. I like that. There you go.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
All right. We got to get out of here. We're running into overtime.
No kidding, buddy. You're going to have to
pay overtime.
I
want to thank everybody for joining us. It's been a blast. We're going to keep doing this until we can, meaning at some point, Pete and I are going to be back out working for a living out in the field. We may maybe take this with us out in the field. I don't know. A lot of uncertainties right now in all of our lives. We need to cope with it. We need to do the right things, keep doing the right things, and we'll get through. I know the sun is going to shine. I have absolutely no doubt about it. That we're going to get through this mess. When? I don't know. In the meantime, we'll keep coming in on Tuesdays. Don't forget, Fridays are not Q&As. Friday, we're going to bring in special guests, talk about particular people want to talk about Sonar. I know today we had a couple of requests if we could do a whole program on Sonar, a whole program on glasses. So maybe that's what we'll start doing on Friday. We'll split it between having a guest and a topic.
Yeah.
And maybe a combination of either or. I think a Sonar, 2 hours on Sonar, if we could go from A to Z with great visuals, Pete, would be fantastic.
Yeah, no kidding. Maybe get an expert in, maybe Danny from Garmin or somebody too. You know what I mean? We could get some really good stuff. And don't forget, everybody, obviously the website, the contests are going on. 2 contests going on right now, Mercury and a Mercury Princecraft combination. Your chance at I had somebody yesterday. Yesterday said, "Why don't you have another Garmin one going?" I want one of them Garmins too. I said, "Okay, well maybe we'll get something else going on too."
I want to mention one thing though. People are we're funny, and I share this with you. I'm not complaining, but we had a complaint yesterday or the day before, right after we had the last winner of the 2.5 Mercury 4-stroke engine. And every month's end, we announce a new winner. And this guy after we had announced the winners. Oh, great. Oh, yeah. Another Ontario winner. Of course. This is bullshit, he says. This is bullshit. And so, I personally thought, wow, that's too bad he feels that way. But it's only the second Ontario winner we've had. Yeah. We've had BC, we've had Nova Scotia, we've had Saskatchewan. And so, yeah, there's more people that live in the province of Ontario than there is anywhere else. And therefore, we have more Ontario ballots in the drum. And therefore, it makes sense that more often than not, we'll probably have somebody from Ontario winning. But it doesn't mean we love you any less because you're not from Ontario. It's a random draw, people. It's a random free draw.
That's right. Enter lots and you get as good a chance as anybody else. That's the way it works, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
I will tell you, though, that chances are you won't win if you don't have a lot of ballots in there, because even this last winner had 121 ballots in there. So he worked hard to get that. And the way he got those ballots was very simple. First of all, you can go enter every 24 hours. So every day you can put a ballot in. However, what he did, what a lot of people are doing, is paying attention to the bonus ballots. Every once in a while, Jordan will throw out there, for whatever reason, I have no idea what cycle he's
probably gave out today, I bet you, didn't he?
I never noticed it today, but I know on last Friday's show he gave away ballots, right? So, but he'll just throw them out there, and all you have to do is perform something, whether it's to go to our YouTube channel or send a friend in or whatever. He's got a million. Oh, I think he's going to do that right now.
Steven's got something on there.
But anyways, regardless, the key is to put as many ballots in that box as you possibly can. It's free. People who are winning, have been winning for the last 20 months. It's because they work at it. It's like fishing. A little bit of effort, great results. Well, winning this fishingcanada.com contest is no different. You put effort in, you're going to get lucky eventually. So, and we do have some Garmin products coming up at some point, and we do have some other great prizes coming up over the next several months. And so just keep at it. It's small price to pay for a great chance at some wonderful products. So we'll be back on Friday at noon. I think we're going to have lunch this Friday. I think we should have lunch together with everybody.
Okay.
Lunch. I'll let you decide, Pete.
Liquid lunch, I'm assuming.
There you go. That's not a bad idea.
Oh, you opened her up, bud. Come on. We're Canadian, eh? Yeah, let's give her. Okay. Let's get out of here. I got to eat lunch right now.
Don't forget tomorrow, or not tomorrow, Friday is we're gonna theme the show. We're gonna have a special guest on. We are trying this week for Gord Pizer to join us from Kenora. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, awesome.
And maybe what we'll do is if we get Gord on, maybe we'll pick a subject matter that we can really dig into with him.
Yeah. And some semblance to it for sure. Yeah.
And then Saturday we've got ODJ Radio on the Fan 590. Don't miss that from 8 to 10 Saturday mornings. And then back with you next Tuesday, with a brand new version of Q&A. Over the weekend, don't watch Fishing Canada show on Global Television Network, coast to coast to coast to coast. Throw as many coasts you want in there. 8 o'clock Saturday mornings. That all right, folks? We'll catch you next Friday.
Thanks for the compliment, Brent. See you, buddy.